Well, Patrick, do you agree? Are oil producers now on the defensive?
No, I don't think so at all. And I think the country as a whole is on the defensive because freedom of commerce is under attack. You know, if you're so concerned about the environment, you have to look at studies that show that the richest nations are also the most environmentally conscious. And when you obstruct commerce and when you obstruct industries trying to produce their product more efficiency and less carbon intensively, which is what pipelines do, the United States has progressively become richer over the past, 100 years. And in that time, our carbon emissions have been reduced and the environment has become cleaner in the United States. And we're able to do that because we have disposable resources. And when you signal to an entire industry that the highest levels of power are against you, that creates a lot of consternation and that's going to create disinvestment. And to say that alternative fuels and alternative energy sources are thriving, they're thriving on the backs of taxpayer subsidies. Billions of dollars. The wind production tax credit alone costs almost $15 billion. And so to say that they're thriving on an uneven playing field. And I don't think this is going to change a whole lot because we have 2.3 million miles of existing pipelines of all sorts here in the United States for natural gas, crude oil, jet fuel. And yet we don't see any sort of outcry about these things because they better our lives and that the market demands these things. And so I don't think this is some sort of huge victory, and nor do I see it as a huge defeat because I think the TransCanada Corporation is going to get this oil to the market because oil prices aren't going to stay at $40 a barrel forever. Oil prices fluctuate. All it could take is one little conflict in the Middle East for oil prices to skyrocket, and they will get the tar sands oil out because there will be a global market for it.
I really want to ask Patrick, what if he really believes that alternative energy hasn't changed in the last 5 years? That's the cliche to call it sluggish and lagging behind, and it's just not true. It's thriving.
But we're not addressing the social cost of energy poverty. There's a reason why emerging economies are consuming a lot of coal, a lot of oil, and a lot of gas, because it's cheap and you're able to better people's lives by using these energy-dense fuels. I mean, let's stop acting like wind and solar is a new type of technology. Sure, we maybe have new ways to harness it a little more efficiently, but Christopher Columbus didn't get to the Americas on an oil-powered ship. So these are ancient technologies that we're trying to find new ways of harnessing, yet we were able to emerge from abject poverty, both because of free market. I let you finish.
One moment, David. Yeah, go ahead.
With free market capitalism and with more energy-dense resources that were discovered right around the same time.
Okay, what about a warming world, pollution, survival of the earth?
Well, yeah, I mean, the way the question and the premise of the question is almost that the people in Canada that work for TransCanada don't have a conscience and wouldn't be affected by climate change, and that their greed somehow surpasses some sort of moral obligation in their brain. I let you finish. The pipeline itself would reduce CO2 emissions. Multiple State Department reports said that. And so if we want to say, hey, the rest of the world, we know you're going to use these resources. We know you're going to use coal and oil. Here's a more efficient way to get it to market that will lower carbon emissions. As far as the impact of climate change, that 97% statistic that keeps getting thrown around about scientists has been routinely debunked, and because it looks at abstracts of studies and leaves out, it wouldn't stand the test of a statistical 101 term paper.
I thought you were a markets guy, not a climate denier.
Let me finish. If you look at the climate right now, climate has always changed. I mean, right now the climate is cooler than it was during the medieval period. We have a precipitous drop in hurricane activity. It's less than 80% drop over one of the highest years on record. And so I pose the challenge of what is worse for humanity, grinding poverty or liberating people through cheap energy resources so that they can then transition, as we are trying to do, into a cleaner market economy.
One of the arguments we've heard for a long time about why this project should go ahead is that it would create jobs here in the United States. I just want to throw out some figures. The State Department did an analysis, and it said that Keystone would support 42,000 construction jobs. This is in the period during which the pipeline would be constructed, which would last about 2 years. But in the end, it would only create 35 permanent jobs. And given those figures, does that merit support for the project?
Well, yeah, I mean, certainly jobs, I mean, those job figures are better than no jobs. But I think looking at the jobs figure as a defense for this project, the pipeline, is really sort of a distraction that conservatives have fallen into. I mean, we shouldn't judge whether things can be built in this country based on how many jobs they'll create. We don't ask grocery stores how many jobs they'll create when they want to open up in a neighborhood. And so what this really signals, though, is that there's a lack of freedom of commerce in the United States, that you're going to major corporations are going to come under political scrutiny from the highest of levels when they're simply trying to build the infrastructure they need to do business. And I think that's the point that conservatives should be harping on, because, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of disagreement about how many jobs it would create, and the State Department as well said, oh, this is actually going to reduce carbon emissions as well. So the State Department's put out a lot of interesting points there, and which really begs into question why they went with this decision when certainly it's the more carbon-friendly alternative. Well, it's also not a credible platform, and maybe to give you a little bit of advice, and the president as well, going into Paris, it's not a credible platform to go into a negotiation with symbolic victories and political moves. If the president had recognized that, hey, allowing pipelines and free commerce actually cleans the environment and we can actually lower carbon emissions, that shows a much more serious person than somebody that's willing to kowtow to the wishes of special interests. I think the president looks weak, and this puts him in a worse position for negotiating a strong deal.